Hello, I am Brittany Lewis, a PhD candidate at the Asset Lab at the University of Rhode Island. Today I will be talking about our paper, I Caught a Person Casing My House and Scared Him Off, the use of security-focused smart home devices by people with disabilities. This work was done with my co-authors, Tina Marie Ranalli, Alexandra Gourley, Piriyankan Kirupaharan, and my advisor, Krishna Venkatasubramanian. Recent years have seen a proliferation of security-focused smart home devices, also known as SSHDs, such as smart locks and cameras. However, despite the critical tasks that these devices perform to protect a user's home and property, their use by and for people with disabilities has yet to be broadly investigated. To fill this gap, we sought to gain a broad understanding of how people with disabilities use SSHDs. To this end, we collected over 100,000 Amazon.com reviews for popular SSHDs and filtered them to find reviews related to people with disabilities. We then conducted a broad analysis of the filtered reviews. Our work focuses on SSHDs. SSHDs are smart home devices that are designed to protect the home and property of their user. We focused on 5 broad categories of SSHDs: locks, motion detectors, security systems, cameras, and garage door openers. In our work, we use a broad definition of disability, which includes any impairment that affects a person's ability to perform daily tasks. We also use the term caregivers throughout our work to encompass those whose experiences with SSHDs are interdependent with those of people with disabilities. The overall goal of our work was to answer 3 main questions. 1. In what ways do people with disabilities leverage the design of SSHDs in their lives? 2. In what ways does the design of SSHDs relate to the interdependence between individuals with disabilities and their caregivers? And 3. What are the barriers that the design of SSHDs introduces into the lives of people with disabilities? Prior work is not focused specifically on SSHD use by people with disabilities. Instead, work about smart home devices for people with disabilities has focused on non-security focused smart home devices, such as smart speakers. Additionally, existing work on smart home security has primarily focused only on digital security rather than physical security, and has not focused on people with disabilities as we do in our work. In order to learn how people with disabilities use SSHDs, we gathered 114,871 Amazon reviews from the product pages of 85 popular SSHDs in our 5 categories. We then filtered our reviews using a set of disability-specific keywords to identify reviews relevant to us. This filtering resulted in 300 reviews written by or about people with disabilities. Our first research question was, in what ways do people with disabilities leverage the design of SSHDs in their lives? We found that people with disabilities leveraged SSHDs to better control their home security and automate non-security related tasks. For example, we found that people with disabilities were able to use SSHDs to make home security more accessible. Sometimes people with disabilities were even able to accomplish home security tasks independently that were impossible prior to the installation of the SSHD. One disabled user of a smart lock commented, "It's the first time I can lock the door without help when leaving since my accident." Additionally, SSHDs helped people with disabilities to feel that they had more agency over their home. One disabled user of a security system wrote, "I even already caught a person casing my house, sneaking around, peeking through windows, and scared him off by using the Ring speaker to ask him what he was doing. He ran off and hasn't returned." SSHDs didn't just increase the accessibility of security-related tasks. They could also be used to automate or simplify non-security tasks. One review commented, "We actually bought a motion detector to let us know when the mail comes." Our second research question was, in what ways does the design of SSHDs relate to the interdependence between individuals with disabilities and their caregivers? We found that caregivers used SSHDs to monitor people with disabilities and their environment. This was done ostensibly to protect the safety of the person with disabilities, but was often undertaken without proper consent. While caregivers often use SSHDs to monitor people with disabilities to protect their safety, some caregivers themselves had disabilities. caregivers both with and without disabilities engaged in safety monitoring. One review states, "My husband has Alzheimer's and my son set a camera up in the bedroom and another that covers the dining room kitchen. So now I can see what he is doing and if he needs anything without having to get up. Saves me a lot of steps as I have hip and back problems." In addition to monitoring people with disabilities, SSHDs were often used to monitor for potential abuse from others. One of the reviewers of a smart camera placed the camera in the care facility of a loved one to help ensure that there was no abuse. The camera was successful at catching theft in the act. The review stated, "Within 48 hours, I caught one of the subcontracted employees stealing money out of my mom's purse." SSHDs were also often used by caregivers in order to proactively monitor to prevent someone with disabilities from getting into an unsafe situation. One user of a smart lock commented that they used the lock to tell when the door was open. They commented, "This is good due to my father-in-law who has dementia and sometimes tries to slip out unnoticed." However, despite the possible benefits of these devices, they were often employed without the consent from the person being monitored. One reviewer who was monitoring the safety of their mother with dementia even commented, "Mom has no idea the system is there." Our last research question was, what are the barriers that the design of SSHDs introduces in the lives of people with disabilities? We found that people with disabilities encountered barriers throughout the entire life cycle of use of SSHDs. Before the SSHDs could even be used, they had to be paid for and installed. Both of these aspects caused frequent barriers for people with disabilities. One review commented on the high expense of maintaining their security system. "Worked great until the trial cloud time period was up. For the price, cloud services should be free. I am handicapped and live on a fixed income. Don't need another expense." Once the devices were installed, they may not have accessible hardware. Multiple reviews written by or about people with hearing impairments commented on the sounds coming from the devices not being loud enough. One review of a security system stated, "The only thing I wish was better is the volume on the base station. I suffer from hearing loss and it was hard for me to hear what it is saying." In addition to hardware issues, SSHD software could also create barriers. One user of a smart camera with a visual impairment remarked, "Their iOS app needs a lot of accessibility work as it is currently not fully usable by those who rely on VoiceOver, Apple's screen reader for the visually impaired." Additionally, people with disabilities often misunderstood the capabilities of SSHDs. This could lead to them abandoning helpful features or not using the device overall. For example, one review of a smart lock stated, "The only thing I worry about is the auto unlock with Bluetooth proximity. Others have pointed out that this is a security concern, since it will unlock your door as you approach it from the inside to see if the person who rang the bell is a mass murderer." However, the user has not been properly informed of how the smart lock operates. The smart lock used by this user will only unlock if the user is outside the door, not when they are inside. Lastly, even getting help with SSHDs was often inaccessible as customer service systems were often not designed with people with disabilities in mind. One reviewer of a camera commented, "Customer service wasn't helpful via email. They really wanted to talk on the phone, which isn't the best way for the hearing impaired to communicate. Me." From our results, we found 5 opportunities for future research in SSHD design. These areas were exploring unintended consequences of controlling physical access for people with disabilities, improving projection of presence using SSHDs, empowering people with disabilities to have agency over their own safety monitoring, designing SSHDs to monitor potential abuse, and exploring SSHD use further by people who are underrepresented in Amazon reviews. For more details on these future research opportunities, please read our paper. Overall, in this paper, we found that people with disabilities were able to use SSHDs independently to protect their homes. SSHDs were also used to help monitor the safety of people with disabilities, albeit often problematically and without explicit consent. Lastly, we found that SSHDs had drawbacks that created barriers of use on people with disabilities. We also proposed 5 areas of future research in SSHDs design. Thank you for listening. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at bflewis@uri.edu. You can also scan the QR code to learn more about our lab.